Welcome to Becoming is Messy, where we dive deep into the journey of survival, transformation, and everything in between. I'm your host, Meghann Dawson, here to share the honest, unfiltered stories behind my own process of becoming. Life isn't a pretty and perfect straight line, and neither is becoming the person we're meant to be. Here, we embrace the ups, the downs, all the beautiful, chaotic, messy moments that shape who we are. Whether you're in the thick of change or reflecting on past transformations, this space is for real conversations about what it means to grow, stumble, and rise again. So get comfy, settle in, and let's get messy. Today's episode touches on concepts that have been foundational to both my personal growth and relationship health, most deeply impacting the success of my marriage. I'm joined by David Lea, a trauma-informed polarity coach, speaker, and visionary who left behind a successful corporate career to pursue his soul's work, helping people untangle the toxic patterns that keep them stuck and guide them into powerful, embodied, emotionally honest lives. David is the founder of Daring Deeply, LLC, where he partners with his wife, Paige, to help people all over the world navigate trauma, relationship wounds, and emotional disconnection. Their approach? It's compassionate, direct, and deeply rooted in somatic healing, masculine-feminine polarity, and trauma-informed methodology. But what makes David's work especially powerful is that it was born from his own awakening. After years of struggling with repeated unhealthy patterns in relationships, parenting, and his sense of self, he booked a flight to a retreat in San Francisco, and everything changed. He didn't come home a new man, he came home an aware man. This is Daring Deeply, breaking patterns, healing wounds, and reclaiming wholeness. Let's get to it. Hello, David. Thank you for joining me on Becoming is Messy.
Hi, Megan. It's a pleasure to be here. Can't wait for our conversation.
Oh, I'm so glad you're here. I have been looking forward to this conversation, not just because of the work you do, but because of the depth, honesty, groundedness that this world just so needs right now. So, help just set the stage for our listeners. When you think about the man that you are today, what are you most proud of?
That's a fantastic question. I'm most proud of what you just said,
Yeah.
was the ongoing trajectory of my healing, growth, and transformation. Is that I am in this space, in this world, in this life to improve me first. Therefore, then I can certainly show up as a better husband, a better father, a better coach, a better influencer, a better individual in which to impact the world. I'm here for me, which in a lot of circles can sound selfish, but it's not. It's the most selfless thing one will ever
Oh
do,
my gosh.
is to make sure that they are making themselves the priority.
Yes, that is right out of a quote that I say regularly, is that the word selfish to me, when I hear that, I think of the word selfless. And so that really
Mm-hmm.
resonates with me. So every becoming story has twists and turns. What are just a few of the ones that have led to who you are in this moment today?
Yeah. I think one of the most pivotal ones is when I chose to launch my coaching
Yeah.
practice, and that happened on June 2nd, 2020. Now, if the audience remembers what was going on in the world in June of 2020, it did make a whole lot of sense to leave my nice, cushy, comfortable. I was in the sales space working for a multi-billion dollar company in sales, and I chose on June 2nd to remove myself from that opportunity and to launch my coaching practice, which is called Daring Deeply. And that was one of the most pivotal moments of my life. Terrifying, scary, moving from certainty to uncertainty, but I knew it was the right time. I knew if I didn't make that decision in the moment, that I would continue to, quite frankly, wallow and not fulfill a purpose that I didn't really realize really until that moment. And so prior to that, I had made a decision a couple of years before that, Meghann, to hire my very first personal development coach. And I remember when that took place, it was probably the most terrifying decision I ever made, and scary from a lot of different viewpoints. as far as how much time am I going to spend? And more importantly, at the moment, how much money am I going to spend? I had never spent that much money on anything, most especially myself. But it was the single most important decision I've ever made in my life. Not necessarily having kids. I love my children, okay, but they're not the most important decision. The most important decision was to invest in myself. And that happened nearly 7 years ago, where I hired my first coach. And then 18 months later, he began to say, hey, you need to make some decisions about your life. He challenged me and said, David, you've been coaching people in various capacities your whole life and not getting paid for it. So stop it. That's what a coach does.
Yes.
Really confronts you
That's right.
and holds you accountable and says, it's time for you to move forward. And I was scared. I was terrified, again, of uncertainty. But it did happen on June 2nd, 2020, and we've not looked back. So it's been quite a journey. We now have the honor and privilege to reach potentially millions of people across the planet, but certainly have impact and influence over so many folks, men and women from across the globe, in healing their childhood trauma to release them into the relationship of their dreams.
Wow, that is an inspiration to me, hearing now 5 years later, as I am just 4 months in to making that decision for my life and launching my coaching practice and really leveraging my chronic trauma background to help others. And so you have certainly been somebody I've been following along with and just excited to get some of your insights today. So thank you for being here and sharing that. Daring deeply, share with us a little bit about what that means to you when you went with that for naming your coaching business.
Yeah, it was actually described by one of my very first clients who said, you know what? You should name your coaching practice. This was before it was an official entity. And she simply said, David, what you do to help me every single day is you dare me to go deeper.
I love that.
I thought, let's name the coaching practice that.
Yes.
So it also, which is interesting, we were working with a couple of incredible marketing gurus a year ago. And we were considering, okay, do we keep the name? Do we move on to a new branding cycle? And they said, oh my gosh, this is absolutely perfect. It describes, as they got really into the weeds of who we are as a coaching entity. They said this is a perfect descriptor, most especially now because we operate in a healing masculine and feminine lens. So daring, masculine.
Yes.
Deeply feminine.
Yes.
Did I know that 5 years ago? Did I know that 6 years ago when we decided, hey, we're going to name the coaching practice? It fits us perfectly because we help people. We help men and women begin to heal their trauma from childhood through a masculine and feminine energetic lens.
Oh, for sure. So carrying on the masculine and feminine, you're in business in partnership with your wife. Share a little bit about her and just your kind of dual approach to the business that you're running to help others.
Yeah. So what we specialize in, really refine and distill down, is we help primarily people who are inside of what we refer to as an inverted marriage dynamic, where the wife is more in what we define as wounded masculine energy, over controlling, overbearing, over functioning, trying to keep everything together, taking care of everyone and everything. And she will always choose a man in his wounded feminine energy. And that man is reluctant and passive and goes along to get along and is fearful of confrontation and conflict. And these two people will always find one another. This is what we specialize in. When I met my wife, Paige, we were in this inverted dynamic.
Yeah.
I was more in my feminine. She was more in her masculine. And so what we describe now in helping men and women is this is what we refer to as an energetic trauma bond, to where our wounds are actually attracting our partner's wounds. And so that's what we did. We thought, this feels normal. Let's get together. The reality is all of our previous relationships were inverted as well. And so this followed along the trajectory of the same narrative. It wasn't until we were introduced to both trauma healing and masculine and feminine energy that a light bulb went off. And we began to work on our own traumas, our own childhood wounds that will help jettison us into a healthy masculine and a healthy feminine lens. We still continue to do the work. Paige is still doing the work. We will always be doing this work. In fact, I have a world-class therapist and 3 coaches who I invest in every single day in order to help me continue this healing trajectory. And Paige does the same. And yes, we are partners in business. She is my confidant, my best friend, my lover. And we are literally living and breathing masculine and feminine energy through a trauma healing perspective.
Yes, I shared with you that the language that you use has really resonated with me, as it's been very similar to my husband and my journey. Go a little further into the polarity work that you're doing.
Mhm.
And really, when you are working with others in the masculine and feminine wounding, what does that look like in practice?
Mhm. Yeah. So, what we know to be true is that energy is all around us.
Yeah.
This energy that we speak of
Yeah.
is true and real. We feel this.
Yeah.
In fact, it's scientifically proven. If we don't have opposing poles of energy, we literally fall off the planet.
Yes.
North and South Pole conduct this energy field that keeps us steady. What we've come to understand is that every single human on the planet possesses both types
Mhm.
of energy, masculine and feminine.
Yeah.
What happens when trauma enters the nervous system as a child
Hmm.
is it can result in a flipping or an inversion of our true core energy. When I was a boy growing up and an adolescent, I didn't experience necessarily the healthy dynamic of healthy masculine and healthy feminine energy. And so then my core energy became inverted. I was more in my wounded feminine energy, where I was more complicit, more complacent, where I was afraid of rejection and confrontation and conflict and would rather someone else make decisions for me in order for me to feel safe. Women who are stuck in their wounded masculine energy have experiences as a little girl where she didn't feel safe and protected and
Yeah.
provided for. She built walls around her heart, her spirit, her soul, her body in order to self protect because she didn't experience healthy masculine and healthy feminine energy
Yep.
from her caregivers as a little girl. And so she grew up more in her wounded masculine, and she will, of course, always choose a partner who's in his wounded feminine energy. So, what we help initially men and women discover is one, we have to understand what your core energy is. And we take them through a particular process, an exercise, an activity, very simple, for them to identify, wait, I think my core energy at the heart of who I am is masculine or
Yes.
it's feminine. That's what I want, that's what I crave, but I don't have that. Why? Because of unprocessed trauma. So, what we've come to understand is that women far more want to be in their feminine, but don't know how. They don't know why they feel like they need to be strong, they need to be powerful, they need to lead, they need to wear the pants, they need to feel like they have to control everything and everyone around them. It's because they didn't experience peace and safety
Yes.
and security and provision as a little girl. And so they had to create their own self protective coping mechanisms in order to remain their nervous system in a safety provision.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I resonate with that so strongly. That was my background. And for so long,
Mm-hmm.
I certainly was in that wounded place. And honestly,
Mm-hmm.
having now that balance and having a partner now who is healed and is now embodying healthy masculine energy and myself healthy feminine energy, there's just a piece to our dynamic now, which has been a really powerful thing. You did have a pivotal part of your story where it was a change, and you talk about before and after and the awareness. You were an aware man after the retreat that you attended. Bring us back to leading up to that retreat. I know you mentioned that you had a critical coach yourself that had helped get you through that journey. But what made you choose to go to a retreat like that? What were some of the paths in your life at that point that were encouraging you to do something different?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Is the patterns
Yeah.
weren't getting me anywhere,
Yeah.
Megan.
Yeah.
And as Dr. Phil McGraw once said, how's that working for you? Oh,
Yes,
wait, it's not.
yes, yeah.
So, yeah, and then I began to realize, and
Yeah,
this is incredibly difficult for all of us, but we
yes.
all perhaps get to the point where we look in the mirror
Hmm.
rather
It's
than
true.
outside the window.
Yes.
So, as Taylor Swift once said, hi, it's me.
Yep.
Yes. And so it was a critical moment, and it continues to be,
Yes.
right? But it was a critical moment to realize, wait, I am the common denominator here.
Yeah.
I need to be able to look within myself and say, I need to heal.
Yes.
Because the vast majority of my life, Megan, I was in a state of blame, a state of victimhood, a state of martyrdom, to where it was somebody else's fault. And I'm the victim to that. And it really entered my nervous system as a child when I was just 2 weeks old, when I lost my mother.
Yep.
She died tragically as a result of childbirth. And so then that set my life on a trajectory, or so I thought, that would be cursed. And so I would leverage that excuse for decades to come to say, this is just who I am. I can't understand why I would go in any other direction because I didn't grow up with a mother. And I used that as an excuse for decades and used it as a way in which to blame everyone else for the way that I was navigating life. And so it wasn't until I had some sobering moments and I attended that particular retreat that you're speaking of. And I left there being more aware. But what's important to
Mhm.
note is the vast majority of people on the planet, Meghann, are stuck at that stage.
Yes.
They become aware. They read all the books. They listen to all the podcasts. They scroll David Lea on social media, but that doesn't heal your trauma. That brings awareness, certainly, but it's not until integration. And that didn't happen for some time until I really began to integrate and fully understand what trauma healing is about, how I can restore my core energy, how I can become more of the masculine man that I know I was designed to become, so I can fulfill my destiny, fulfill my purpose, and leave a legacy.
So then you're aware and you're starting to take those steps to actually integrate and take action. What did that look like for you? What were some of those early steps that you took to start actually making change?
Yeah, it was to get incredibly soberly clear and concise and honest.
Yeah.
Because for all of my life, this is what I chose to do, Meghann. I chose to stick my head in the sand and think, oh, wait, I can't see it.
Yeah.
They put their hands over their eyes and suddenly the world disappears. And they think, oh, wow, I'm all alone. That's how I was living my life, was if I simply ignore the problems, they will go away. And as we know, that never happens. But I got my PhD, Meghann, in kicking the can down the road.
I had that too.
That somehow, some way, if I pray hard enough, if I dream hard enough, if I wish hard enough,
That's right.
if I, quote, do all the right things,
Yes.
then I will somehow live a life of which I want to live. The reality is, it's not what you do, it's who you become. And that transformation happens from the inside out. It wasn't until I began to look internally and say, why do I continue to behave this way? It's all because I have the wounds within me that are conducting my life rather than the true, energized, powerful, strong, dominant, aware, devoted man that I know that I can become begins to step forward.
I've seen that you describe your coaching as compassionate but directive. Can you share about what that kind of looks like in a you're coaching somebody?
Yeah. It is validating one's understanding of where they are now and providing a directive to where they can go. So it's meeting someone where they are and loving them more, not to leave them there. So again, they have to make those decisions. In fact, an affirmation that I said to myself for so long when I first began this process for myself, Meghann, was this. I learned this from a friend years and years ago, and I said this about every single morning when I woke. For about 6 months, I affirmed myself, and I said to myself, I think I even said it out loud. I said, David, I love you, brother. I love you for all the mistakes and the missteps that you've made. I love you for all the forgiveness that you have felt for yourself. I love you for where you have come from.
Yes.
And I love you just the way you are today. And I love you more not to leave you there. I was just working with a client yesterday, and I said, this is the definition of contentment, where you feel at peace today and want more.
Yeah.
And that helped me really understand, wait, I don't have to be seething in this discomfort forever. And I also don't want to sabotage the peace and the passion and the purpose of today in order to get somewhere. As one of my coaches tells me often, you don't measure your progress by looking ahead. You don't look to the horizon because you'll never get there.
That's true.
What you do is you measure progress by looking backward.
Yes.
Say, wow, 6 months ago, this is where I was in life. And now, look what I've accomplished. Look at who I'm becoming.
Yes.
And that's a fantastic way in which to understand your progress moving forward. It's not, I haven't gotten there yet, so I'm going to continue to beat myself up in layers of shame because I'm not supposed to be where I am now, and how do I get to where I am in comparison? As we know, comparison is the thief of joy, as Teddy Roosevelt once told us. Right. So rather than comparing ourselves to someone else, we only compare ourselves to ourselves as where we have come.
Yes. Oh my gosh. There's so much you've just said that I resonate with. You had mentioned a comment about the name of my podcast, Becoming is Messy. And what does that mean? And for me, it really is the whole, in my experience, we just as a society celebrate, you know, we say we love how far people came, and we like, wow, look at how hard those beginnings were. And now look how successful this person is. Yet we judge and criticize the pain that shows up in the messy middle, at the rock bottom moments when people are hurting and there's addictions and there's affairs and there's all the ways people act out in pain. And instead of offering solace and comfort and understanding that something's happened and that person is in a deep pain, and at least giving some grace for wherever they're at, we want to gloss over and we really don't want to hear about those messy moments where I really resonate with your comment around just meeting people where they're at, and not everybody's going to be ready for full healing or not being a victim, but offering grace at least where they're at and trying to be there to help them along the way on that journey, regardless of where they're at. So that really resonated with me. And curious now, as you're holding space for these folks that you're working with, over 3,500 hours of deep work with people, what are some of the common things that have people stuck that you see across all of these people that you're working with? Are there some commonalities that you've uncovered?
I think the most powerful aspect of life that's missing, not only internally within the self, but between individuals, is validation.
Yeah.
Once upon a time, we as children didn't receive validation. That oftentimes we were to be seen, not heard.
Yeah, that's so true.
We were told what to do, how to obey, not to talk back, not to have and generate an autonomy and sovereignty within our own childhood. And so because we weren't validated on who we were at the core, we were told that we were something else. We were told that we were supposed to follow in the footsteps of our parents. And by the way, our parents who are wounded as well.
Yeah, right.
So that generational trauma gets passed on if we don't make a break into that particular pattern. But just providing validation to the self first. And that's what we're initially helping men and women do, is you've got to be able to provide validation. And that begins with healing the original parts from childhood that didn't allow you to feel and be validated by those in which did have control over you. Parents, caregivers, teachers, coaches, neighbors, etc. And so we have to give to ourselves that validating factor long before we can ever validate someone else or someone else can validate us.
Validation. We just want to be seen. I feel like all of us just want somebody to understand us, to see us, to know that we are worthy just by being. When somebody feels like they aren't worthy, they aren't seen, how do you start validating somebody that's in victim mode? And how do you help encourage somebody out of victim mentality?
Yeah, it all resides from when an original wound entered their nervous system as a little boy or little girl.
Yeah.
So we help them connect to what we call, as Dick Schwartz has said in his parts work, his IFS model, which we have taken to yet another level, is that we have to understand when first it was uncovered, when we first experienced a lack of validation in life. And it may have been when they were 2 or 3 or 7 or 12. But I promise it happened very early on. And why was someone invalidated? Because of the caregiving's wounds that said, wait, I have to make them a certain way. I'm terrified, their wounded parts talking, I'm terrified to allow my child to feel a certain way or to go a certain direction because that enables my fear of not being seen or heard. So this is how this perpetual cycle continues, is we have to connect the client to the original wounded part of them that was invalidated. And when we begin a new relationship from adult to that inner child, that's the true healing that begins to happen. Because the wounded part that feels so much shame, that's bringing those triggers forward in the real life of the adult, that wounded part simply wants to be heard. Validated. Of course, because they weren't validated. So when we begin to initiate literal conversations, internally or externally, through the journal, through our parts sessions, as we call them, during our coaching sessions, we help them begin to connect with that wounded part that simply wants to be seen. And when we build that connection, that rapport, as I often say, we have to love our trauma in order to heal our trauma, which means we need to love the inner wounded parts of us that are screaming and coming across and triggering and all these seemingly nefarious ways of getting our attention, whether it's physical or emotional ailments. It's all trauma that is still encased inside of our nervous system and wreaking havoc on our nervous system and triggering us. And that's why we're in unwanted relationship pattern.
Hey friend, if you're just starting your Becoming is Messy journey with this episode, welcome. I am so glad you're here. I encourage you to check out the earlier episodes. They dive deep into my own healing journey and feature some incredible thought leaders who have shared powerful insights from their own personal experiences of becoming. So when you get a chance, go back and hit play on those. It'll even give you some more context for what we're talking about today. All right, let's get back to my conversation with Dave. If somebody's listening right now and maybe is hesitating, not ready to full blown go to a coach, are there some modalities or some things that you just recommend just to individuals in general to start this work on their own?
The first question I will always ask someone is, tell me the last time you felt triggered. Now,
Yeah.
the word triggered is very nouveau. It's
Very
very
much
trendy.
agreed.
It has been around for some time. Exactly. So is to recognize, okay, when was the last time you felt triggered? And
Yes.
that may be in that moment when they're asked if they've ever felt triggered.
Yeah.
But what a trigger is, to bring it back and to distill it down to a definition, it's when our nervous system, when our body feels uneasy, feels dysregulated. Sweaty palms,
Yeah.
elevated heart rate, rage, dissociation, numbing, when we feel like we're ultimately unsafe.
Yes.
When we feel unsafe, that's a trigger. And we typically have parts that come forward to try to protect us from feeling more hurt. So we go into a reactionary mode, or we go into a dissociation mode. We leave, we escape, or we become combative, or a combination of all of it. So the last time that somebody felt triggered, the last time you got super pissed,
Yes.
the last time you felt solemn and grieving and wanted to leave and run and scream, the first thing I want them to do is simply acknowledge that is happening. And as I begin to teach our clients how to communicate to those wounded parts that are the triggers coming forward, is to simply acknowledge, validate, and say, I see you.
Yeah.
I see you. I can understand. Tell me more. Help me understand. It sounds like, it seems, it feels like maybe you're angry. Help me understand. How can I help? Know, as I'm continuing the conversation,
Yeah.
know as they're talking to the part, know that I'm here.
Yeah.
Know that I'm not going anywhere. I may not have been here for decades, but now I'm initiating a conversation with you. And by the way, the wounded parts may be giving the finger to us.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Because they are hurt,
Yeah.
they are wounded, they are burdened. And so when we begin to have a communication with those parts, they may be combative, they may be skeptical,
Yeah.
they may not want to talk and communicate. Well, we have to remain consistent and return. And that's what we help our clients build, those natural relationships that have seemed unnatural.
Yeah.
And so when we begin to build a rapport with those wounded parts over time, those wounded parts become receptive.
That's right.
Less skeptical, less adversarial, less combative, and more open to the fact that there could be something different. Because the reality is that 5-year-old part that continues to come forward in that triggering moment as an adult doesn't know that they're not 5 years old anymore.
That's right.
They're still stuck in that space. And so it takes the self-energy from the adult to relay that to them. From there, and now we're going to talk about polarity again, from their healthy masculine energy in leading them to understand, to provide reassurance and say, I've got you. You're not going to do this anymore by yourself. Yeah. We're going to do this together. Know that you will never be left alone again. I'm here, whatever you need, whatever you would like to do. I'm here to receive you and to provide leadership and guidance and love.
I was just in a somatic experiencing 8-week class, and we talked about just what you've said, really just naming when that trigger comes up. And eventually it's like with practice, you just get to the point where you can do it while it's happening. But it's just to start looking back and seeing. But we took it a step further and we started talking to that feeling as when that first traumatic thing happened. So trying to connect the dots between. And so when you talk about, hey, this is my 5-year-old self that experienced some type of trauma that now is triggering me as a 45-year-old woman, when something comes up and I know it's tied to something like that, it's just, okay, this is 5-year-old you. And just talking in a way that I'm talking specifically to my inner child. And it's just been a really powerful exercise. Crazy. When you start doing it and practicing it, it just snowballs and you just notice it so much more frequently. And it's neat to take away the power, but also give compassion to yourself.
So
Yeah. So thinking now of some of your group work, you've not only been to the life-changing retreat yourself, but hosting retreats. I'm curious, just different from one-on-one coaching, when you think of energetically and emotional healing, what's different when you're in that larger group? What are some of the things that you experience as part of a community in this healing space?
yeah. We exclusively offer what we refer to as an intensive two-on-two
Mm,
retreat with married or committed couples. So it's
yes.
David and Paige
Yeah.
and the couple.
Ah,
We spend 3.5 days with them.
yeah.
And so what's important to understand is that our work is exclusively independent and individual.
Mm-hmm.
But in this unique particular experience, we're bringing a married couple together, but we're actually working on their individual independent wounding
Yes.
while they're supporting one another in that experience. When we come together in that particular environment, it's incredibly powerful. Paige and I love conducting those types of experiences. We get to work together and bounce
Yeah.
back and
Ah,
forth from feminine and masculine and bring so much awareness
yeah.
to the couple in that environment where transformation absolutely begins to take place. And I say begins to take place because, as we know, a retreat is simply a moment of awareness. It's not until they begin to invest in
Yeah.
long term coaching experience that the actual change begins to happen and integration begins to happen. And continuing on, we just have launched a brand new program called the Healing Collective within our coaching practice, which is more of a group experience to where I hold group coaching calls where we have hot seat coaching. There are a lot of people in those particular environments, and we just launched this. And so where people get to come and ask a particular question. It's still one-on-one coaching because I'm addressing one person at a time. But as a collective, which is why we named it that way,
Yeah.
as a collective, they get to glean and experience and learn from what's being talked about, what's being coached in the moment too. Although our work is bedrock in the foundation of one-on-one,
Yeah.
it is an individual journey regardless. So do I work with married couples?
Yeah.
I do in a one-on-one environment. So it's incredibly important because, as I often say, far too often when we're trying to heal a marriage
Yeah.
or fix a relationship, it's like listening to Tupac Shakur and Beethoven at the same time. And no one wants to hear that. I love both artists, but I don't need to hear them at the same time because I
Yes.
can't hear them.
That's right.
So it's important that this is an independent individual journey.
Yeah. So carrying on the individual journey, what does it look like for you and Paige to support each other on each of your own individual growth journeys? Since you're continuing to grow and
Yeah,
be your best self, how do you support one in that endeavor?
yeah, it's a great question. So it's almost a cannibalized answer. In order for me to support Paige and her healing, I have to heal. In order for Paige to support me and my healing, she must heal. That's the delicacy, that's the fragility potentially of a healthy polarized marriage dynamic. Is that as long as Paige is doing her work, then I want to remain in this relationship. Really important to understand. I'm going to say something very bold, Meghann. I am not committed to Paige.
Yeah.
I am
Same.
not
Yep.
committed to our marriage.
Yep. Yep.
I am committed to me.
Yes.
So, in fact, it was the entirety of the vows that I said
That's
on
right.
our wedding day. I said this: Paige, babe, I commit to my consistent healing, growth, and transformation so that then I can support you who has committed to do the same.
That's it.
That's a
Yes.
vow. It's the
Yeah.
only vow ever needed between a married couple,
It's so
rather than
true.
till death do us part
Yeah.
and sickness and health and 401ks and dogs and
That's so
kids.
true.
We need to commit to our individual, independent healing.
Yeah.
So if Paige wakes up tomorrow morning, taps me on the shoulder and says, "You know what, David? I think I'm out.
Yeah.
I don't want to be a part of this anymore. I don't want to
That's
heal. I
right.
want to grow. I'm not even sure I like you because the socks on the floor are driving me crazy." I would probably have some questions.
Of
I would
course.
probably
Yeah.
be a little confused.
Yeah.
But ultimately, if she chooses to move in a different direction, she chooses to move in a different direction.
That's right. I
Nothing. I
very agree.
want to be in a co creative,
That's right.
polarized, compassionate, supportive relationship. But if one person chooses to continue their healing, there's going to be some additional questions to be asked and answered down the road.
If you and Paige are ever in Madison, Wisconsin, we'd love to have you join Kelly and me for dinner. We have such similar philosophies. Our wedding vows, we didn't promise forever to
Beautiful.
each other. We just promised to each grow, continue to evolve as ourselves, and just show up for each other the best we could each day. And eventually, if that took us in different directions, we're just at peace with that because we really do cheerlead for one another's individual growth journey. You keep doing that and you keep evolving, and day to day, you still show up as a better version of yourself, and it's actually adding up now for quite a few years.
Yeah,
People kind of
absolutely.
question in the beginning of our marriage when we shared our vows. People kind of, gosh, you didn't really commit to each other.
Didn't.
Yeah.
Committed to myself.
Yeah, you've had chronic trauma in your background. I've experienced that myself. And as I'm starting my coaching business, I'm curious, how do you continue to hold space for others and their individual journey without depleting yourself?
Yeah, it all goes back to my own healing.
Yeah, yeah,
So, which is grounded in boundaries.
yeah,
So, disallowing the permeation, the penetration of someone else's energy.
yeah,
Yeah, it is a really important question and one for all healing practitioners to really negotiate. Because if our wounded parts are leading the coaching or therapy session,
right.
we're in trouble.
That's right.
Yeah. So we have to remain grounded in our self energy
Yes.
in order to allow them to hold space for all that. And then we go home. And I'll be very honest, I don't come home, I don't stew in it.
Yeah.
I'm empathetic, I'm
Of
compassionate.
course.
But when I'm done with a coaching session,
Of
I'm
course.
done.
Yeah. Yep.
I'm absolutely done. Love them, honor them, yes,
That's right.
got it. But
That's
it's
good.
not that I don't allow it. I simply, because of my own healing journey, I'm able to establish those boundaries
Yeah.
and provide all of my expertise and all of my coaching support in those 50-minute sessions. Once I'm off, oh, how you doing? How's it going? Let's go.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. I'm going to go eat an apple. I'm going to have some lunch. I'm going to go home. I'm going to go on vacation, whatever the case may be. So it is a challenge. And for healing practitioners and supporters who may be listening to this, I am challenging you to consistently ask that question is, how am I taking care of me?
Yeah.
How am I taking care of me?
That's right.
Absolutely.
I have a wrap and reel segment. Just a few quick questions just to check in, get to know you a little bit more. What's one unhealthy pattern that you still catch yourself slipping back into from time to time?
Judgment.
Yeah.
Yes, because of the nature of who I am and what the good Lord has provided me.
Yeah.
And because I can see, Meghann, I can see things that some people don't.
Yeah.
And so my ability to feel and see and understand is the dark side, so to speak, or
Yeah.
the wounded side of that. Yes, is that my expectation, the wounded part comes and says, don't you get it? What's wrong with you? Haven't you seen this? How hard is this to understand? Yes, do you hear that judgment? That judgment that comes forward and says, you are not as good as you could be. Why? Because I have a wounded part that says, if someone is less, then that means that I'm less. I could go into the deeper depths of that. But judgment is an ongoing wounded part of me that I'm consistently working with.
What's a comfort that gets you through hard days?
It's right here. See this?
Yeah.
It's a journal.
Yep.
It is my journal.
Yeah.
And notice that I don't say my wife, my
Yeah.
kids.
Yeah.
Nope. It's my journal. It's me remembering and recalling. I know the process. I know in order for me to ground, I have to find me.
Yeah.
I have to find the internal, grounded, powerful, strong me that I know to be true when I'm feeling off, when I have those wounded parts come forward in shame, in contempt, in conviction of all the nastiness that my wounded parts are bringing forward. I have to recall and remember, wait, who are you? And that happens. It happens here. It happens in my journal. It happens in walks. It happens in my internal dialogue within myself. And that's what keeps me grounded.
What's a belief about masculinity that you wish we could cancel for good?
That it is a controlling nature. That we often, in the zeitgeist, we often hear the phrase toxic masculinity. We don't subscribe to that language. You'll never hear me
That's
say
right.
toxic masculinity. But it's that there is this pervasive misunderstanding that masculinity is about control. It's about dominance. It's about a hierarchy. It's not about a hierarchy. So I am the primary leader. Paige is the primary follower in our relationship and business. But leader and follower are equal.
Mm-hmm.
That's the mistake that people make is, oh my gosh, you're controlling her. No, actually, when people say that I'm controlling her, that's their wounding. That says what I hear is what I experienced when I was over controlled. I just represent an echo of their wounding.
That's right. One little bit of change that you've influenced ever since I've met you and have been following your work, I have not used the phrase toxic masculinity. You've helped evolve my own language and understanding, and so I appreciate you for that.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you. Yeah. Before our final question, can you let our listeners know how they can connect with you and your work?
Absolutely. Easiest way is to go to our website, Meghann, and that is daring-deeply.com. Make sure you have the dash, friends.
Yes.
I don't know where Daring Deeply will take you, so I'm not responsible for where that may land, but you have to have the dash. So daring-deeply.com. Plus, Meghann, we're all over social media. Yes. TikTok and Instagram are our biggest. We also have a podcast, and we have a full presence on YouTube as well. Awesome. Or send me an email. You can find that on the website. But yeah, send me an email. Reach out to me. I answer all of my DMs. It's me. Yes. It's not a robot. So I promise I will answer every DM.
One final question. Some listeners right now are in their rock bottom moment. When you found yourself in moments like that in the past, what's a piece of advice you wish that would have come sooner?
That regardless of what's going on around you, that you have every ounce of everything that you need within you right now. There are no missing puzzle pieces. There are no extra puzzle pieces. That you have everything within you right this moment. And that once upon a time, I promise you, this moment happened when you were an infant. Regardless of your trauma history, regardless of your family history, once upon a time, my guess is that as you laid in that crib, as you laid in that bassinet, as an infant, you couldn't provide anyone anything. You were completely dependent. You couldn't feed yourself. You couldn't soothe yourself. You couldn't change your own diaper. And yet, my guess is someone came up to you, looked over the rail of that crib and said, "Oh, look at her. Look at him." You could do nothing for them, but they saw within you a spark that you were absolutely worthy of living this life. And that is what I want everyone who's listening right now to know, that they are absolutely worthy of the healing that can move them into a place where they can truly know their worthiness.
Thank you for your story and your wisdom. It's been such a pleasure getting to chat with you today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Meghann.
If you enjoyed this conversation, please subscribe, rate, and leave a review on your favorite platform. Please also follow me on Instagram at Meghann Dawson and at Becoming is Messy. You can also find additional content and resources on the topics discussed here at the Becoming is Messy blog on meghannDawson.com. A huge thank you to the incredible Wolves and Sheep for providing the music for Becoming is Messy. Check them out on your favorite music streaming platform.